Welcome everybody, I'm Tommy the Keyblade Master, and this is my channel. This month I'm doing a top 5 Castlevania games countdown. Last week I did number 5, which was Lament of Innocence, so today is number 4, which is Castlevania Rondo of Blood, or Castlevania Dracula X Chroincles, because I'm going to be looking at both the remake and the original game. Blah! Not you again. Take it easy, Sonny. I'm only here to see you bash the remake. While I will admit that the original one is better than the remake that's available on this disc, if you've come here to just listen to me bash about how awful the remake is, you're going to be disappointed. I'm going to go through both and tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly of both versions, compare them a little bit, and show you where areas where the original game really knocks it out of the park and the remake screws up, and then vice versa, because there are some things that the remake does well that the original one doesn't. I'm also going to explain to you why, if you own a PSP, you might want to think about getting this version over downloading the Wii Virtual Console version. So sit tight and listen to my number 4. I remember in 2007 when Konami first announced that this was coming out for the PSP, I immediately went down to my GameStop and bought myself a PSP and pre-ordered this game. I always wanted to try this game ever since I heard about it, and heard that the Super Nintendo version wasn't exactly a perfect port by any means. I have yet to play the Super Nintendo version. I plan on soon now that it's on the Wii U Virtual Console, but I heard this is the better game, so I immediately went and picked up this remake. It also contained the original game, so I was uber excited. The story in Castlevania Rondo of Blood is pretty much typical Castlevania. Every 100 years, Count Dracula awakens. This time you see it by an evil cult who sacrifices a young lady in this cutscene, and it's up to a whip-wielding Belmont to go finish the count. This time it's up to Ryu Belmont to finish the count. Really? Because in the original game he sure looks like Ryu from the Street Fighter Alpha series. Now that looks like Richter Belmont there. But I guess I should wait until later to talk about the differences between tone and art style between the two versions. That said, one thing that does stay constant through the two versions is that Dracula and his minions kidnap 4 women from the nearby village, including Richter's fiancée Annette and her little sister Maria, as well as 2 others. Maria is the one you definitely want to find, and she's the easiest to find. You can find her in regular stage 2, being held captive in the dungeon. If you can rescue her from this guy, she will join you and be a playable character. And I should say, between the 2 stories, Maria's differences really set the tone. Just look at some of the dialogue differences here.
Marie, I'll help you.
With what?
Well, we have to beat the bad man.
Ha! No. Just be good. Go home back to your mom and dad. They're worried about you.
No, they know I'm safe with you.
As you can see here from this dialogue, she's still somewhat of a comical character, but she's meant to be taken seriously, and her backstory is quite dark.
Who are you, mister? A good guy?
I am Richter Belmont, vampire hunter. And you are?
My name's Maria Renard. I heard all about you from Annette. I came here to beat some bad men, but I got caught. My family are vampire hunters too, so I guess that means we should be friends now.
As you can tell, in one version it's really light-hearted and almost comical. She basically wants to go out and beat the bad men. In the remake, it's a little darker. She lost her parents, and she was separated from Annette, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, definitely darker in the remake than in the original. For more proof, this is what she's like when you rescue Annette, or one of the lines, best line in the game when you rescue Annette.
Come on, let's go home. Not yet. There's still something I have to do. You go back without me. I'm gonna beat that vampire to a bloody pulp. See ya!
And the funny thing is, she can do it too. But I'll get more into that in the gameplay area of the game. And speaking about saving Annette, it's completely optional in the TurboGrafx version. Saving any of the other 3 women are completely optional in the TurboGrafx version. Not so much in the PSP version. If you don't rescue all the girls for keys that you need to solve a puzzle in the clock tower, by the end of the clock tower you'll encounter Annette here and find out she's just been a contestant on Ultimate Makeover Undead Edition. Now, both of these games have very similar story and plots. It's basically go out and defeat Dracula and rescue the missing girls. But the TurboGrafx version, whenever you hit a cutscene, tries to be more lighthearted, almost even humorous at times, while the remake for the PSP keeps it dark and brooding throughout. And when I start talking about graphics and character designs, you'll really start seeing the difference between the two, because, again, the anime characters really fit the lighthearted story, while the sort of Iga-style Castlevania character designs really fit the darker story of the PSP remake. In the end, it just depends on which one do you prefer. Do you prefer to go lighthearted, or do you prefer to go dark? I personally like both, but again, it's up to a person to make the decision. If you like more happier, brighter colors, you're going to go for the original. If you want a darker, brooding set, you're going to go for the PSP. As I've noted before, the graphics in the 2 games are probably the most different aspect, not only in just looks, because one's 3D and one's 2D, but overall color and tone. One's kind of got a little bit more brighter anime feel, while the PSP version is a whole lot more darker. Let's look at the PSP version first. The graphics in the remake are 2.5D, which means you have 3D character models on a 2D plane. And I think they look okay. Like I said, the tone is a lot more darker and kind of more realistic. The character designs are done by Ayami Kojima, just like they were in this game's direct sequel. I guess I should mention that this game had a direct sequel, and it was a little gem I'm sure very few people heard about. And by very few people, I mean every Castlevania fan. But I'll get into that one later because it's higher up on the list. I should mention that I also really like the new character designs for the women you rescue. They look more the part of the roles they play in the village, a nun, a nurse, and I really like Annette's character model more in this one than she was in the original TurboGrafx. Annette is supposed to be Maria's older sister. Can you see any relation here when you look at this cutscene? Yeah, in the original they don't even look like they would be related. And also helping in the character design is Annette's wearing the same type of clothes Maria will be wearing in the direct sequel, so it helps establish their relationship. So again, all in all, the graphics in the remake are pretty good, but let's go and take a quick look at the TurboGrafx version. The original version has more of an anime feel to it. The cutscenes are kind of bare minimum animation, but still it's kind of nice. It's kind of quaint in how old school charming it is. I kind of like these cutscenes even better than the remake, even though, technically animation-wise they're crap. It kind of just shows the way it used to be way back 20 years ago when just simple animation could be eye-popping. I should note also the backgrounds and the character designs in the 16-bit one are pretty good for the era. One of the things I liked about playing the original TurboGrafx version in this collection is that some of the things just look so retro and just reminds me so much nostalgic of the classic Castlevania games of the past. This area right here is taken right out of Castlevania 2, and you can see the references to past Castlevania games in the original more than you can in the remake. And some of the backgrounds for some of the stages are a bit simpler compared to their PSP remake counterparts, but I also like these just as well. So it's really a question of, do you want to go retro or do you want a new flavor to your graphics? You won't go wrong either way. I just prefer the classic look just a little bit better than the PSP remake, but that's my opinion. They did a lot of good stuff with the PSP remake as well. I should mention that not only in the cutscenes, but in his game sprite as well, Richter seems to be heavily inspired by Ryu from Street Fighter II when it comes to his design, and they even threw in a boss that does a Shoryuken as well. Wouldn't it suck more than a vampire with dry mouth if they actually made a Castlevania fighting game where Maria, who is perfectly innocent and naive here, all of a sudden becomes a vain little brat who's only interested in her bust size? What are you looking at? Wouldn't this be a great time to show off the Castlevania Judgment footage for that newfangled Wii system to show exactly what you're talking about? Yeah, that would have made a great joke. Unfortunately, I sold my Castlevania Judgment video game a couple years ago. It's a crappy game. I would say the worst Castlevania game I've ever played, and I have played through the Game Boy games. So yeah, it has no redeeming qualities as a fighting game, and it just makes a mess of the Castlevania characters. If you want, go look on YouTube. There's probably videos made of clips from Maria showing exactly what I'm talking about. As for me, I have no plans on rebuying it because I think that game sucks more than a vampire with dry mouth. So you're not going to see a review about that game anytime soon from me. What's so funny? You finally admitted that the crappiest Castlevania game of all was in 3D. Touché. Anyways, back on topic, I have to go with the original just a little bit more, just because the graphics are more charming. I appreciate what they did in the remake. Of course, one of the big reasons why I prefer the graphics in the original over the remake is Richter's sprite in the remake is just huge, and he's a big target. Worse, they seem to slow him down and make him heavier. Well, in the remake, Maria is a little bit bigger and heavier too. This actually helps her because she's just a little bit too small and just way too light. Whenever she takes a hit, she just goes flying in the original TurboGrafx version. So the extra weight actually makes the PSP version easier for her, but way harder for Richter. I guess I'll go more into some of the other changes in the gameplay section, but if you're just looking at playing the game through straight, the TurboGrafx version is a little more balanced, but if your heart is set on just using Maria, use the PSP version. She's way better in that one. She's still way better in the TurboGrafx version than Richter, but again, I'll get into that in the gameplay section of this review. As far as the sound goes, it's pretty good. Both the PSP version and the original have very similar music. The PSP version is remixed, but it's remixed well. So it's pretty much whichever one you prefer is the one you're going to like best. As for voice acting goes, you have both English and Japanese for both versions of the game. And there are no subtitles to the original version. It's important to remember that. So it's kind of a good thing they actually have an English track here. Alright, the gameplay in Castlevania Dracula X Chroincles or Castlevania Rondo of Blood, it's typical of your classic Castlevania game. It's a 2D platformer, and it's tough as nails. Now, the stages are fairly linear, but what's new in them is that you now have multiple routes. For example, in stage 1, by going through this wall here rather than exiting that door, will lead me to an alternate stage. Each stage, up until the last set of stages, has at least 2 routes. The regular routes take you through the castle, and the alternate routes always seem to lead to an area outside of the castle. And it's pretty interesting. It really does help the gameplay. And the 2 women that you need to rescue first in order to save Annette in the remake, completely optional in the original, but they're in the same places, but they are all lie on the alternate routes. So you'll have to find the alternate routes if you want to save them. The great thing about the remake, though, is that it isn't just to save Annette. Each one of them gives you a power-up. One lets you destroy special walls, and the other one actually allows you to destroy red skeletons. The only game in the series I know of that allows you to actually fully destroy the red skeletons. It's a nice little handy power-up. They also come in handy in finding some of the extra stuff that's available in the remake. And while I will go on that the remake's bigger sprites and somewhat clunkier controls makes it less enjoyable than the original, it does make up for it because there's plenty of secrets, and you do have to unlock the original game plus the game's direct sequel by finding them in the game. It's not a real big pain in the butt. A quick trip over to GameFAQs will tell you where they're at. They're not exactly super secret hidden, and they're not really hard to find, especially with Maria. Speaking about Maria, why would you want to choose her? I mean, your choice is between a skilled vampire hunter with a magic whip and a family lineage of going out and killing vampires, especially the strongest one, Count Dracula. Why would you want to choose instead a 12-year-old girl with pigeons and a whole bunch of cute little animals? The simple answer is Maria kicks Richter's ass in almost every category. Just for starters, she can double jump really high. She can also run and gun with those doves, constantly keeping moving and out of harm's way. Her attacks are just as powerful, if not more powerful, than Richter's. She can also roll and slide out of danger. All of this for about two main cons. Number one, she takes twice as much damage as Richter does when she gets hit. And she can fly twice as far when she gets hit. Sometimes even rolling up in a little ball and rolling really far when getting smacked by enemies. So a few cheap deaths might happen when you use her from falling off pits. But those are really far between. And just look how agile she is. It's almost impossible to hit her. If you still don't believe she's better than Richter, just look how easy she handles Count Dracula, being able to jump over his fireballs and easily whack him in the head while moving. She just totally beats Richter. Yeah, Belmont family legacy, blood feud with Dracula, magical whip, my butt. You guys got whooped by a 12-year-old with a pussy cat. Complain all you want to, Sonny. You know you deserve that after that type of joke. Oh, that's gonna leave a few marks. Anyways, Maria is a lot funner to use than Richter to a really big extreme. In fact, Richter's kind of frustrating to play through this game as. So I really recommend, especially for your first time once you unlock Maria, just to stick with her. And you should unlock her, like I said, in the second stage if you just go the normal route. She's not hard to find, and she's just so easy to use. So once you have her, stick with her until after you beat the game, and then try it with Richter. It's a lot better that way. Both versions are equally as challenging. In fact, I would say that if there is one that's easier, it's actually the remake, because it does give you a few more hits. That said, the characters are a little more weighty and clunky, but it's still a fun game. I give the original 16-bit TurboGrafx CD version a 4.5. It is the better version. The graphics have more charm to them despite their age, and the controls are just a little better, as well as the character sprites not being so large and bulky. I give the 2.5 PSP remake a 4.25 out of 5. Even though it's not as good as the original, the controls are clunky and the character is a little bit more bulky looking and easier to hit, it makes up for itself by having plenty of extras to find, music and other items. So it's still a fun game. There's even an extra stage that is thrown, and that's way better than what the TurboGrafx version had as a hidden stage. So all in all, it really is a great game. Now, if you buy the PSP collection, you will have to go through some of the 2.5D version in order to find the TurboGrafx CD unlocked. I suggest going to a place like GameFAQs and looking up their cheat menu, because it's not just a matter of progressing so far in the game. You do have to find an item hidden away. It's not too hard, but I should warn you, it's there. I do also recommend this PSP version of the original because it has an English dub, and I don't think the Wii U version has the English dub, and I don't think it even has subtitles to boot. And while Castlevania Rondo of Blood is not a game that requires a lot of exposition to understand the gameplay, it does kind of help whenever you hear people talking to know what they're talking about. So yeah, I recommend the PSP version of the original one over the Wii Virtual Console. Wait just a cotton picking minute. There's 2 games left in this collection that you haven't even touched yet, and you're giving it a score? Okay, granted, there's one game that has nothing to do with Rondo of Blood, so I'm going to save it for another review. In fact, it's the next on my list. It's number 3. As for that other so-called game, it's not a game, it's actually an error message that would display if you plugged in the TurboGrafx CD wrong in some way. I'm not quite sure how it works. But anyways, the error was kind of fancier than most, as it was actually a little mini game that you could play before the system crashed with the error message that you got in the wrong slot. And this one, you just whip a little bit, and then Maria shows up and tells you to press start to exit. So, it's kind of a neat little Easter egg, but it's not really anything worth reviewing, in my opinion. I'll let you discover it if you buy the game. Next week I will be going into that last game. Like I said, it is the next one on my list, number 3, and I will be looking at the PSP dub as well as the original. You do know that everyone says that the PSP dub sucks. Technically, they're wrong, but I'll tell you why they're actually right about it. Stay tuned next week. I'll look at both dubs. In the meantime, if you want to listen to my next review on Castlevania Symphony of the Night, where I will look at both dubs, the PSP version and then the other ones, and tell you what I think of them, by all means click subscribe and get all the rest of my movies. Thank you.